We're going to cross over right now to the Iranian parliament, listen up to the foreign minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, speak to the parliament. Let's listen up.
And a final step will lead to the removal of concerns as a comprehensive unit. It means all those steps have to be implemented. All of those elements have to be implemented, otherwise it won't be worthwhile. And this is something that actually both sides are committed to. And something which you have to pay attention to is that, well, you see, the text includes steps to be taken over a period of 6 months. And these steps, some of the steps have to be taken by Iran, some of them have to be taken by the other side, and some steps have to be taken mutually by both sides. Another common point is to set up a joint commission. The IAEA exists, which actually can verify most of Iran's activities, but there are no tools and there's no institution to look into the fact that whether or not the other side will live up to its commitment during these 6 months or not. So a joint commission will be set up by Iran and a 5+1 group, so that should any concerns exist, then that commission will look into that, and the rest of the concerns will be looked into by the IAEA. Another point concerning the generalities of the text is that the first 6-month period could be reviewed if agreed by both sides. Another point which I want to mention as another general point is that both sides have said that they will maintain the constructive atmosphere throughout the talks, and this is something which both sides need to do. This is the first layer as the generalities of the text. The second layer includes the transparency of positions of both sides. So actually, as you know, as for the transparency of positions and the stances, Iran needs to make transparency arrangements. One is that we guarantee that our program will remain peaceful, and the second, and this is the first point, and the second is that we should announce that we will not seek nuclear weapons, and we have stressed that, of course, we have stressed that in the text should be mutually agreed upon. Our first proposal was so that as under the guidelines of the leader, we have to mention that in the text, and this is something that both sides agree. So one of the words which is used in the text is reaffirm, is used in the text. It means we have already affirmed it, now we are reaffirming it, we are reiterating it. We have already announced it at the highest level, at the level of the leadership, that the leader had already announced that the use of weapons is forbidden. To the other side, in order to make its positions transparent, is that it should recognize Iran's right to use nuclear energy. One of the points which has been repeated a lot, let me explain that, and please please pay attention to that, because it is in line with national interests. Under the NPT, if you read Article 4 of the NPT carefully, you will see that it stipulates in this NPT there is nothing in this NPT which will deprive the signatories to the NPT will not deprive the signatories to the NPT of their inalienable rights. Inalienable means integrated. So no one will be, and nothing in this NPT will deprive members of the NPT. Nothing will deprive the members' rights to use nuclear technology for peaceful purposes. When a right is inalienable, this is inalienable right, and inalienable right exists, whether or not it is recognized. The point is that this inalienable right needs to be respected, and this right, actually, the details of this right is not mentioned in the NPT. What the Americans are saying is nonsense. After Mr. Kerry made those comments, I responded to that. I put them on the Twitter, and many people confirmed what I said. In the NPT, no place in the NPT has been mentioned the right to have a reactor, to have power plants. It says you have the right to use nuclear technology for peaceful purposes. No details have been mentioned in the NPT, but in two NPT review conferences, one in 1990 and one in 2010, it was explicitly explained. And of course, the NPT doesn't say we recognize the right, because the right already is there. It says countries, their decision-making, the way they choose, as for the fuel cycle, that must be respected. This is what the NPT says. If you look at the text, the text of that agreement, both in 1990 and the later one, the review conferences actually are tasked with confirming and interpreting the NPT. So at least two times in review conferences in 1990 and 2010, it has been interpreted first, and once, of course, in the disarmament in 1978 in disarmament conference. And this rights of nations was recognized. But the right should be respected. So what has been mentioned in the text is that Iran must be able to use its full rights. This next sentence says Iran's enrichment program is part of any solution. It means a program. They have been making every effort to neutralize this program, but this program has been stressed in the text as part of any solution. Within a certain framework. Of course, it must have a framework, and what the framework should be, we need to negotiate that. And as for the details of this framework, well, we have a 6-month period to talk about it, and of course that time frame has to be set as well. As for another point which has been mentioned as one of the steps, of course, I think something on the part of the P5+1 is that they should announce that all UN sanctions and all bilateral and multilateral sanctions on Iran, the UN sanctions are unconditional, but the bilateral and multilateral sanctions, all of them have to be removed as a position of the P5+1. And I have offered you that point as another transparency arrangement. Another point is to maintain the status quo. It means both sides have agreed to, over the coming 6 months, the measure to actually not to further intensify the situation as it is today. Both sides. What steps should be taken by the other side? It should stop its efforts to stop a ban on Iran oil exports, and it will not issue a new nuclear program-related sanction. On resolution in that regard, whether by the UN, whether by the EU, or by the United States. And another commitment by the other side is that the other side should continue, for us to continue our 5% enrichment, uranium enrichment. and it should recognize our right to research and development. In return, what are we going to do to maintain the status quo? At Natanz and Fordo, we should stop further development of activities there. Please look, if you know the suggestions and proposals which have been put forward before, you know what they include. At Fordo, we were supposed to actually change the pipelines at Fordo in such a way that we would take at least 9 months to change it back to the current situation. But at the current situation, this is not the case. At the current situation, both Fordo and both Natanz, they will continue their activities, but at Fordo, instead of 20% enriched uranium, it will produce 5% enriched uranium. The same goes for Natanz, but we will not increase our activities. They will not increase the sanctions, and we will not increase our capacities and activities at these two sites. Some people have said that Iran will not do this, will not do that. We could easily say that in one sentence we could say we will not increase our capacity, but we insisted on mentioning the details, because if we would say we will not increase our capacity, it could be ambiguous. Then they would come and tell us, okay, why are you producing 3 and 5% and all that? And then they could find fault with the fact that if so we mentioned the details. We said that what does it mean when we say we are not going to increase our capacity, what it means. At Natanz we mean this, at Fordo we mean this. At Arak nuclear site, well, Arak is not ready yet. It's still under consideration.